All right. So I wanted to start off by reading a couple of statistics that I think put this video into perspective for me, but also into this problem as well. And to start off, this is a report it's an American report, but the statistics I believe are comparable to a lot of the rest of the world. So it says this is in late 2023, it says 67% of Christian pastors report having struggled with pornography use at some point in their lives. 18% of all pastors say it is a current struggle for them. 26% of pastors under the age of 45 report a current struggle with pornography. 54% of practicing Christians report viewing pornography compared to 68% of non-Christians. And then 81% of pastors believe their churches are not adequately teaching about or addressing compulsive sexual behavior. That means that in every church, you're likely to find at least more than half of the congregation dealing or having experienced or struggled with at some level, whether it's been like at an addiction level or just experiencing pornography at some level, more than half. And then the second statistic was 81% of pastors believe their church are not adequately teaching about or addressing compulsive sexual disorder. And so for 81%, that's a whole part of people's lives that the church is not serving. That's a whole part of the church's lives that the church is not creating a space for people to express, to address, to deal with, giving people a chance to work on that part, to feel comfortable to bring that up, or to feel equipped to deal with in their regular life. And I think that is such a very, very powerful thing that I think is why I really wanted to do this video, is because that is it's a very stark, statistic on the church environment. Most of the people who use porn are between the ages of 18 and 24, right? And then the fact that it says that by age group, 57% of young adults, which are people between 18 and 25, use porn on a monthly basis or more often than that. So that's 57% of young adults. The age at which people get exposed to porn is between 9 and 13 years old. By their teen years, most youth, literally, so these are people between 9 and 18, 18 and 24, have been exposed to porn. And that says 93% of teen boys have been exposed to porn by their teenage years, and 62% of teen girls. And this statistic is basically driven by internet access. Currently, 75% of the world have access to the internet. And as of 2024, over 4 million websites offer pornographic content, and that accounts for 12% of all sites on the internet. So 12% of every site has some form of pornographic content. And one of the things about that is that with this much access to the internet for people who are younger, and just how everything works together, where peer pressure and conversations with friends and the exposure level going lower and lower, and younger people being more savvy with the internet, there's more opportunities for accidental exposure to porn. And with accidental exposure to porn, there's also, sometimes it's not just accidental, sometimes it's curiosity. Kids are designed to learn. They're curious about everything. When they hear their friends talking about something, when they hear something on TV, want to learn about something, all of these different things contribute to that desire to seek this type of content. Sometimes it doesn't just start off from a sexual place. And I think that another thing as well that I was very interested by is that, specifically in this generation, that the shade between sexually explicit content and content is eroded every day. The movies that we watch, the series that we watch, the people who we follow, the conversations which a lot of kids are listening to or are engaged in, the amount of sexually explicit references, or the amount of sexually explicit content that they experience, because of the volume of content has just gone up in terms of what is ingested. There's more of those there. And as we spoke about, the age of exposure for most teenagers, for most people in their teenage years from 9 to 13, and all across that until probably 2025, is when they're going to be in that hotbed of experimenting, of exploring, of looking through that. And now when you mix that with the fact that there's no necessarily intervention in a lot of spaces where they can talk about these things healthily and with a holistic approach, and not just attacking it with shame or just condemnation. In 2020, a study found that 25% of young adults say they consume porn as their primary source of sexual education, which poses another problem, which is that by learning about sex from porn, teens and young adults will likely develop a skewed perspective of healthy sexual relationships. And so now you're finding that these 9 to 13-year-olds who are growing up on porn, who have no valve to kind of release that tension and release to receive any information or guidance from people who are supposed to help them through this, they are now turning more to porn because that is the only thing that is teaching them. That is the only source that is allowing them to explore certain things, explore certain topics. And so now when you just put everything together, when you lay everything on the table, and now you have 25% of young people are using porn to learn about sexual education, right? And then we've just spoken about how 54% of practicing Christians are dealing or struggling with pornography on some level. And then you have a large number of young people who are being exposed to it at such younger and younger ages. It's literally becoming this thing where porn is, even though it's not something that we speak about, it is something that is impacting our lives in very real and tangible ways. Because compulsive porn use, or however way that you view porn, that has significant and it has real effects on daily life. It affects every relationships. It affects how you think. It affects how you talk. It affects how you have sex. It affects how you approach different people between genders. It affects every single part of your life. And so even though it's not something that is being spoken about, for this generation, it is one of the most key issues, because that is where the frontier of gender relations, of policy in government, on so many different aspects, how we treat people, human rights even, it goes beyond just porn, but it touches on so many different things that it is something that we really need to hone in on and to think about honestly. And another reason why I think that porn is such an important issue is because this is something that impacts everyone. It impacts everyone, whether you watch porn or you don't, whether you struggle with it or you don't, whether you are 10 years clean or few hours clean. It affects everyone. You are connected to it in some level. One of the key points about pornography is that it changes the way that people think biologically. It changes the way that you approach situations. It changes the way that you deal with things, because you are activating these pleasure areas more frequently. You are building these habits and practices that push you towards accessing more and more and more. And I think that impacts what they call the gray matter of your brain. And the gray matter is responsible for things like processing information, controlling movement, regulating emotions, memory, and other cognitive functions. Then what happens is that when you start to lose this gray matter because of the impacts of porn, now you start to experience memory loss, cognitive impairment, issues with the language, attention, reasoning, judgment, complex decision making. All of these things are having a tangible impact. So imagine if literally 54% of people in a church on some level are in danger of going through something like this. So that just puts into a perspective how serious of an issue that it is, and how serious that we need to like approach this and to create those spaces as well to address these to address the need for these conversations and to hold space for people who are going through this at whatever level that looks like. A porn addiction can happen to anyone, but there are things which make certain people more at risk, and some of those things are trauma. 70% of people will experience trauma in their life. That's basically what more than a majority, actually an overwhelming majority of people are going to experience trauma at some level. And especially when people experience trauma from younger ages, that makes them more likely to be at risk to have a porn addiction. And I think I wanted to bring this up because another thing that underlies a lot of these conversations is that the focus becomes more on porn than a lot of the underlying behaviors, underlying experiences, underlying traumas that actually are driving this need to go to porn. When we are just having this discussion, we can't have it without speaking about the real without speaking about trauma, without speaking about why is this appealing to you? What is it about these experiences or porn that draws you to it? Is the comfort about it, the habitual nature of it, the routine about it, the connection about it? There's something that has to be there. And I think that in church specifically, which is why I really wanted to speak about this, that is such a key part about this conversation that we need to have more, is that how can we approach this conversation from that perspective. And the reason why I'm speaking about porn in such a communal sense, in such a way that we are not just focusing on people who watch porn, is because I think that porn is a very communal choice. You are choosing to engage in systems that go beyond just one person, go beyond just one video, that go beyond just one production house, but you're speaking about a whole industry. You're speaking about millions of people who are being impacted by this. You're speaking about your own relationships. You're speaking about how you're choosing to view certain people in your life. There's a lot of relational transactions that you're making in that one decision, that it's hard for me to believe that it is a personal choice. It is maybe by you, but there's still so much that is attached to it. And I think that, and to address that, you can't do that alone. You can't untangle all of these things alone. You need people. You need a whole community of people to work with you through that. And if we're in a generation where at least 60% of people are either experiencing or going through some form of pornographic use or addiction, you cannot go through that alone. You're going to need people. One of the other things that we read about porn use or an addiction is that it is isolating. It draws people away. People are keen to hide. People are afraid to talk. People are afraid to communicate. People are dealing with so much shame and feelings of inadequacy and self-worth, and there's so much that is tied into that you cannot unfortunately pull yourself up. You need other people to be there. And so I think that another part of this video is just like, it's also encouraging people to build those lines of communication and those lines of humanity, of communal problem solving. Like, all of us are joining in on this situation together, because we all know that we are all affected by it, so we all have to join in. We can't choose which side or when. Like, we all have to be there because it's relational. This is the one thing where it's relational, which is very different from any other substance. But that relational nature means that we also need a relational solution. We need to be in community. We need to be in our friendships, in our relationships, in our communities, in our churches, all of these different things, Okay. I think that is it for today. Just again, a recap, because I'm looking at it again and it's still short. It is quite shocking. But the statistic that I think is just so important for all of us to have is that 54% of practicing Christians are reported viewing pornography and are either going through it or struggling with it. And 81% of pastors believe that they are not adequately addressing or teaching about compulsive sexual behaviors. And I think that is the one thing that I would love for each of us to take into our own churches, is that if 81% of churches feel that they're not addressing this, we have to start. We have to be the ones to start. We have to be the ones to begin those support groups, to begin those tough conversations, because it is tough. And I think just continuously remembering the trauma that is linked to it, that underlies a lot of these challenges. That is the one thing that I would love to just continue with empathy, approaching these conversations with empathy and addressing them with empathy is such an important thing. Yeah, man, that is it from me, man. That is it for me. I hope this video has been helpful. Hope the conversation has been helpful. Yeah, something I've been wanting to do for a long time, obviously because of my own struggles as well. I've been struggling with porn for what, maybe, is it probably 10 years now? 10 years, and yeah, 10 years struggling with it, and yeah, man. So yeah, this topic is definitely really close to me. Yeah, shout out to God, man, as well, always. As long as you have God, there's always hope. So, man, I'm trusting that too. And yeah, that is it from me, guys. I'll see you guys somewhere, somehow on one of these channels. Most probably I'll see you guys back here next week on Monday, even though it is Tuesday now. But I'll see you guys back here next Monday. Thank you. Peace.